McNair gives it to George, running right up the middle. Touchdown! Titans! There are no flags on the field! It's a miracle!
Safety, now you're one-on-one with it.
Shows why he's the man. In trouble. Sack!
Yeah, it works. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back, Titan Nation. Thank you guys for joining us. Today I have a special guest, a gentleman from A to C Sports, Titans reporter, works weekdays on 104.5 The Zone. We have no other than Buck Reising. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. How are you doing? I appreciate you having me on here today. Looks like you got a pretty good setup behind.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Again, this is just my garage. Nothing too crazy, but just a little bit. I'm a big Yankee fan, so before when I started the channel, I had the Titans flag, but I had a Yankee flag here, and I would talk about Titans, and people would give me shit, and they're like, "Why do you have a Yankees flag?" And I was just like, "All right," so I'll put more Titans stuff there. And again, people can be a little picky on certain.
The internet is not a kind place.
It really isn't, man. It really isn't, and you got to kind of have thick skin. If you're going to put yourself out there, you're going to have thick skin to get some feedback, because people will call you out on the littlest things. I mean, the smallest things, people will be like, well, you know, your hat wasn't tilted this way this time now. And, I mean, it's crazy, but I'm glad to have you on, bud.
Yeah, no question. Thanks again for having me. I'm glad we could make it work this time.
Yeah. So first questions first, man. How many times do people comment about you looking so similar to Andrew Luck? How many times have people told you, oh, the Andrew Luck situations and stuff, or something, or Andrew Luck comment in general? It's a lot.
Yes, all of my life, basically, or at least as long as me and Mr. Luck have been alive. Mina Kimes, my friend at ESPN, made it much, much worse, because I did a draft show with her and Mike Golick Jr. and Jason Fitz when the NFL draft was here in Nashville, and in front of an audience of about 1 million people on the live stream that day. She asked me why I look or why I sound, why I have so many similarities to Andrew Luck, and then effectively nuked my mentions. So going back as far as college, I was at Indiana University while Luck was playing for the Colts, doing student television. There was an event that I was broadcasting from, and I had a kid come up and ask to take a picture with me, thinking that I was Andrew Luck, and then come back afterward and say, "Oh, you're not Luck." And I said, "No, I'm sorry." And she said, "Well, I don't need this anymore." I said, "Okay, that's all right." So it happens. It happens quite a bit. I'm over it.
Yeah, I could imagine. And I was just like thinking about, I was like, I remember when I first started, watching and listening to you, and then my friend's like, yeah, he looks exactly like Andrew Luck. And at that time I didn't, I never seen a picture or anything of you. But then when I saw him, like, Jesus, I'm like, that would be like Andrew Luck's like revenge. We couldn't beat him in the regular season at all, never. And then he retires, and then we have a reporter that reports for the Titans and talks about the Titans, but looks exactly like Andrew Luck. I'm like, damn, that's Andrew Luck. That's some shit.
I know, it's like a sleeper cell embedded in the locker room. Now, I drool less, and I have a better hairline than Luck. So those are the only two things that I've. His bank account is better though. So you pick your battles.
Yeah, I mean, bank account between hairline. I don't know which one's worse, but I mean, hairline is pretty bad though. So.
Hairline's tough scene. You want to hang on to your hair.
Exactly. So you're good on that one, bud. So a quick question. How did you get into your profession? Was there anything, anyone that you looked up to, or you just liked, you liked sports and wanted to kind of follow up on that?
Yeah, actually, neither of those things, if I'm being completely honest with you. I just sound like a 45-year-old. And people have always made fun of my voice. I was going to go to law school. Both my parents worked in politics and government for about 35 years between the United States and the Middle East. And I probably didn't watch a full NFL game until I was a sophomore in college because I just didn't grow up with sports. It wasn't really it didn't have any kind of significance outside of Indiana basketball in my life.
Gotcha.
But I was taking pre-law classes, political science major. I had a cousin who's a baseball agent,
Okay.
actually runs the baseball division over at CAA, and I interned with him because I thought maybe with my law degree, that might be something that was interesting. And ultimately, I was in a sports management class with a couple of people that did student radio. They said, "Hey, you sound ridiculous. You should probably try this." I said, "I know absolutely nothing about sports, so it's probably something I shouldn't do." And then somebody ended up thinking that I was good enough at faking it to give me a job down here right out of college, or an internship here right out of college. And then I basically learned on the fly everything about I had a general idea. I played football in high school. Like, I understand
Okay.
the sport, of course, and I understand most of, but mostly, I played football in high school for the free T-shirts and like the team dinners and things like that.
Gotcha.
Nothing over the top. So neither of those things were really motivating factors into how I ended up with this job. It was just
Wow.
largely dumb luck and people asking, why I sound like this.
So you fake it till you make it, right? The definition of it, bro.
Don't tell my bosses.
That's awesome, though. Again, you learn a little bit about each reporter and how they actually ended up getting here and stuff like that. And again, Mike Keith, his favorite sport is baseball, and so is Mike Koharski, to be honest with you. And they're big Yankee fans. And you assume that they would be Titan fans, obviously, because they work well. Mike does, work for the Titans and stuff like that. But again, everyone else has their own agenda. But the fact that you didn't really care for sports till college is pretty it's pretty remarkable, man.
It's not like I didn't like sports. I just didn't. It was never a part of my life, so I didn't really pay much mind to it. And then I lived with a bunch of my high school buddies, and obviously the only thing on in the house at that point was sports. So you learn to like sports.
Gotcha. How did you run into A to Z sports and stuff, and how did that come along?
So Austin and Zach used to work at the radio station that I started at, 102.5, when I was interning. They used to host the morning show. Then they ended up getting fired at 102.5 about a year and a half before I quit to go work for A to Z Sports. And so we had a little bit of familiarity with each other.
Okay.
Leading up into that, they have done a spectacular job growing that, just the two of them, for most of the time that they were putting it together before they ended up. Now, I think A to Z Sports Nashville has 18 employees. They're also in A to Z Sports Dallas, A to Z Sports Kansas City, and expanding further and further, which is a tribute to their work ethic. But yeah, they took me to lunch right after one of my friends got fired at 102.5, and I was getting ready to quit. And it was a good sign that it just happened to fall in line that way. Again, much of my career is due to luck and no actual skill on my own part. But
no pun intended.
Building something. Say that again.
I said no pun intended. With your career is mostly about luck.
Yeah, no pun intended. So they said, we're building something pretty unique. Nobody else in the market is doing it. And we think that you would do well. And I said, okay. And it took me about 6 months to figure out how the hell to do what it is that they do on the internet, basically, and how to take advantage of all of the things that are on the internet as best one can. And it's really, really helped me in a way where now I am able to do both of those things, terrestrial radio and live streaming sports content, and covering the Titans both for the Zone and for A to Z Sports. It's been a really, really good deal. And also my agent's a stud to help me keep both salaries. So that was a nice thing too.
Now, a quick question about, going live and doing live streams and then being on the radio. What's the difference, and which one do you prefer? Do you like, having that initial feedback from like the live feeds, or you like the radio still?
So the difference is, I think the A to Z Sports primetime show last night was 36 minutes. There's no time limit on it. I go for as long as I'm keeping the most amount of people's attention, and then I stop. it's as long as I pay off the people who I endorse, and do the things that I need to do to make sure that everybody who makes the show free, with all of the great sponsors that we work with, as long as we pay them off, then, as long as the content's good, then I'll keep going. Some nights it'll be 30 minutes, some nights it'll be an hour and a half, depending on, it's Sunday to Thursday night. So we do a lot of them after Titans games during the regular season. And those, obviously, you spend a little bit more time. Radio is 3 hours for me, and it's 3 hours solo. So I have a producer, Lucas, who does a fantastic job. I have two producers, one on the primetime show, who does not do much front-facing stuff, and then Lucas on the radio side, who I can bounce stuff off of, so it's not just me talking for 3 hours. But honestly, the streaming stuff has made radio seem like a breeze, because on streaming, I don't have 5-6 minutes of commercial breaks to kind of sit back, collect my thoughts, and then reapproach a topic. I just have to fire all my bullets at once and do it in live time. But it's both things have helped me be better at one another. Honestly, I don't necessarily have a preference for one over the other. I think both are hugely important. The Zone is a massive entity. It's the biggest sports talk station, basically within a 60-mile radius, in Middle Tennessee, and really one of the bigger ones in the Southeast. A to Z is the internet. So I have all of the internet at disposal, and now you can see me.
Yeah.
You can see the radio show now. In fact, live stream all 3 hours of the radio show. So I'm already comfortable doing this kind of stuff in front of a camera. It doesn't really feel like any difference at all. But they're both important, and I enjoy them both for different reasons.
Gotcha. And did you, by any chance, take classes later on in college after you kind of did your internship, on just, public speaking and just speaking out? Because that was one thing that before doing like YouTube or anything like that, public speaking for me was kind of like a big question mark. I would kind of get stage fright, and I didn't really I could talk to anyone, by themselves, and hold up a conversation. But when it came to a camera or multiple people, it was a lot different. Did you have any difficulties in that, or no?
Everybody has a tough time with it, I think, out of the gate. I didn't take really any classes. I had one sports broadcasting class and a professor that I'm really close with. So I did take a course. But really, it was more about reporting than it was about broadcasting, which is a little bit different. But I did learn a lot of things that are applicable to what it is that I do. The talking stuff is just, I talk a lot. I'm somebody who you probably get tired of on a regular basis. I'm sure I bothered my teachers in school because I talk too much. I just generally like to talk. And I like to talk to people about things that I'm interested in. That's why I think the radio show does really well. And the podcast, frankly, because I'm responsible for 3 shows every week between A to Z Sports Primetime, 615 Sessions podcast, and then my radio show on the Zone. I think it's just kind of what I was doing anyway is being used now to pay my mortgage, as opposed to me just yammering at people.
Makes sense.
On a regular basis.
Gotcha. Now, I'll obviously talk a little bit later because, the draft is coming up. Well, I have a couple questions for you about the draft. Say game time, Titans game, where are you located? Is there anything that you kind of prep yourself before the game? Do you get there maybe 2 hours before, an hour before the game? And what time do you actually leave after the game too? Because I think that's when you're the busiest, correct? Is after the game, the post game?
Yeah, for sure. I probably about a 12 to 14 hour day for me on Sundays, because I do well, this year is going to be a little different, but normally I do a pregame show for A to Z Sports at 8:30 in the morning. Then I'm usually dressed and ready to go by then. So when the show ends at 9, I can just change out of my bathrobe and into my suit and get in the car. And I live downtown, so it's very easy for me to get to Nissan Stadium by 9:15, typically for a noon kickoff. So, you try to get there between 3 and 4 hours beforehand. I guess just in terms, you want me to walk through like my entire day,
Yeah,
or
just
how?
like a
I
nice
guess.
little, brief, walkthrough explanation and stuff about your day. Yeah, pretty much.
Sure. So pregame show at the stadium by 9:30 typically. I'll get situated in my spot in the press box, which is right above suite. It's suite level, so I think it's technically right above the lower bowl where we all sit. And then I'll get my setup together. I'll have my iPad, my laptop, my notebook, my stat sheet, my roster breakdown for both teams in front of me. I'll go get a little lunch in the press lounge and hang out, talk with people from other teams, scouts from other teams who are there advanced scouting the opponents for either team, because I've got a couple of friends around the league that work for different teams, so that's good to be able to catch up. Go down about 10:30 to the field. Now last year was different, obviously, because we weren't allowed field or locker room access due to COVID, but normally under normal circumstances, I'll go down on the field about 10:30. You see some people that you want to catch up with, whether it's agents, people who are associated with the team that hang out on the sidelines, and things like that. Do a lot for pregame, like who's dressed, who's on the injury report, who's inactive, who's not active, or who's inactive, who's active for that game. You'll kind of keep an eye on players who are injured. Maybe somebody who's got their left quad wrapped. That's something new. Maybe Brett Kern's got a glove on his hand from while he works his way back from I think he had a fractured wrist, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So things like that. Then the game obviously takes place. Right afterwards, we run from the press box down to the post-game press conference room where we'll talk to Vrabel. We'll get Vrabel and quarterback and typically Derek Henry at the podium. Then we'll all go into the locker room. Most times I'll have most of my post-game story written for A2ZSportsNashville.com by the time I go into the locker room, so that all I need to do is plug in quotes. I'll write my story, I'll publish it, then I'll get set up for A2Z Sports Prime Time and do it from the stadium more often than not. Last year was a little different, but that's typically how it goes.
And you said it worked like that. It goes head coach, from head coach, it goes quarterback to running back. That's how, like, or is it just?
It's not always like sometimes if say Jeffrey Simmons had a big game, if Jeffrey Simmons had like 3 sacks, instead of all of us rushing to Jeffrey at his locker, they'll bring him to the podium, so it's a lot easier. Derek, Ryan, and Vrabel are almost always at the podium, though.
Gotcha. And even now, like at first, Derrick Henry was a little bit shy. He seems a little bit humble about just talking to the press. Now he seems a little bit more, I guess, comfortable and stuff like that. Do you have any relationship towards like a player or two? Maybe again, I had Teron Davenport on, and he would say there were certain guys he would go to after the game, the post game, to talk to. Maybe he said he went to Cameron Wake before and talked to him about finances, because Cameron Wake was actually really good with finances. Was there anyone that you would had a little bit personal relationship, or just know a little bit better than the other players, or it's kind of still on the same basic?
No, I there's a lot of guys I have relationships with. There's a lot of guys who I know that I want to talk to after games. I try to do my best to create relationships with almost everybody. Now there's 53 on the active roster, 10 on the practice squad, so you're not going to have close relationships with everybody,
of course.
But certainly, over the 5 years that I've covered the team, there are guys who I definitely spend more time with, who will, because I do try in doing my job to get their opinion or their perspective on a situation that I have questions about, whether it's, Taylor Lewan getting a penalty or giving up a sack on one play, and then asking Taylor, what happened there from his standpoint before I get in front of a microphone and rip him for it.
Gotcha.
Or something like that. There are you create these relationships, and obviously guys come and go, so those things change from year to year. But I've always been on really solid ground with the majority of the players in there. Quarterback's a little different because they do a much more they do a lot more to protect the quarterback from us just generally having conversations with him, because obviously we would all just gravitate towards the quarterback when locker room is open.
Gotcha.
But that's what you spend a lot of the week doing. So where on game day you can go down in the locker room and you know that you've talked to who's a good example, Jeffrey Simmons, just for the sake of using that same comparison. Spent 45 minutes Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday in the locker room at practice with these guys. And then on game day, if you need something from them, then they're more likely, if you just
to open up
like human beings, to have a more honest and open conversation with you instead of just rushing down there and shoving a microphone in their face.
Absolutely. And now with last year was a little bit different, like you said, with COVID and stuff and limited access to everything and stuff like that. Even training camp. I believe everything will be 100%. That's what they said in the season. I think training camp as well. How is it for training camp, and what's the most exciting thing that you look forward to in the season? Is it the draft? Is it training camp? Is it just the NFL season itself?
Yeah, it's definitely not the off season. The draft process can go straight to hell. The training camp largely because it's in the middle of the summer and I'm sweating out in practice and getting sunburned. That can largely go straight to hell. But the games itself are a lot of fun for sure. Game day, it's just like the players. You get up for game day. You put on nice clothes. You are a part of the atmosphere. You're a part of the, your job as a journalist, and I'm a little bit of a different kind of journalist, but your job as a journalist is not necessarily to make yourself a part of the story, but you do feel a part of the story. One of the most exciting things of anything that I've ever done is being a part of the media corps for the team that went to the AFC title game, where you go to New England and you see Logan Ryan pick off Tom Brady in his last pass as a Patriot to go on and then beat Lamar Jackson, the best team in the AFC that year, in Baltimore in one of the most improbable games I've ever seen. Kansas City in itself as an environment was something that I'll never forget. Chiefs fans are insane. It's the games. It's, like just like for fans, you get up for game day.
Got you. And for your career, like, again, you said you've been, covering the Titans for 5 years now. Out of those 5 years, would you say that experience, the whole playoff, and then going to the AFC Championship would be probably on the top of your list?
Yeah, no, that's tops without question. I mean, I've seen Derrick Henry do some pretty incredible things, whether it's the 4-touchdown, 99-yard run game against the Jags, or Marcus Mariota touchdown pass to himself in the playoffs against Kansas City that year. But yeah, that team was different. Because largely Titans football, and I don't have to tell most fans this, Titans football and offense was ungodly to watch, constipated. It was not enjoyable. And unlike you guys, we don't have red zone in the press box. We're just there to watch one game. So I would get very irritated often. I did not like the way that they played football for the majority of my time here. But then, Derrick Henry finds his foothold. Mariota gets benched, and Tannehill plays quarterback at a higher level than I think anybody was expecting. You see A.J. Brown and Corey Davis kind of come out in that initial year for A.J. and be as close to a dominant number one wide receiver as certainly I've seen in the last 5 years. I know you guys have had a couple of wide receivers, but not terribly many that have panned out at the level that we think A.J. Brown is going to be able to reach. So that team, everything came together at the right time. And it's as much, with any playoff run, no matter what sport it's in, it's as much about luck and health as it is how good the actual team is. And that just felt like everything aligned for them pretty well that year.
Yeah, I think the last, when we drafted from, wide receiver, would be Derek Mason. I would say Derek Mason.
Probably the closest.
Yeah, the closest on top of my head right now. But, yeah, I mean – it's crazy to see the atmosphere and how the changing of the tide. Because I remember, again, like Mike Keith said, we didn't have that much – football wasn't that good in Nashville. It was really, really rough. And it makes you appreciate it, I guess, a little bit more. And the people complain and get upset. They're like, oh, I hope we don't go 9-7 again. I hope – but look at the years that we didn't go 9-7. We had horrible records. Again, people take that for granted again. And
Yeah, no, I'm one of the fortunate ones. They outside of my first year, which was 3 wins, Marcus Mariota's rookie year, they've been a winning football team. So for as much as I've complained about how they looked, they win.
Yeah, they do. They win games. So you can't fault them on that. I remember, like I said, first Titans game. I think it was the first year Andrew Luck. Unfortunately, I had to bring him up again, but he came to Nashville his first year. And there was more Colt fans than Titan fans in the stands. And my friend's like, what the hell is this? Like, this happens? I go, unfortunately, the years that I've been going to, yeah. But luckily, it's changed over the course of the years, you know?
Yeah, no, the environment, well, we'll see what it looks like when things are more opened up. And we hope that everybody will be, largely vaccinated and be able to enjoy the atmosphere again, because that's the playoff game at Nissan Stadium this year, the first one that they've hosted in the better part of a decade. It didn't necessarily feel like any different to me, which is unfortunate because this year has made me have a far greater appreciation for fans because I enjoy the atmosphere, and the fans are the vast majority of the atmosphere outside of the actual game itself.
Definitely. Yeah, I remember I went last year to the Thursday night game where we got killed by the Colts. But again, it was, again, like you said, like just the atmosphere itself, it just felt weird. It just felt like almost like a scrimmage game I was watching. It didn't feel, I don't know, it was just off. Yeah, you need those fans. So hopefully, towards this year, everything will be back to normal and 100%. I mean, they say that. I mean, actions speak louder than words. So hopefully we'll get that going. So,
shots in arms.
Yep, exactly. Now, I'm going to put you on you might have talked about this most likely because, again, the draft is coming up next week. I have a couple draft questions for you. Say you are John Robinson. Who are you picking up and why are you picking him up on draft day? Number 22. Do you think we go down? Do you think we stay? Do we go up? What do you think?
It's a tough question because you don't know. It lacks the context of who's been selected before they pick at 22. How the draft board is broken based on, where they kind of what makes the most sense to me based on who might be around there at that time. And again, I don't think we know anything about this draft or very little about this draft as opposed to any other year, given opt-outs in college football and different ways that the medical evaluations are done, things of that nature. Yeah. But I think the idea that the Titans should be married to a wide receiver or a corner in the first round is a little bit silly, just because those are the top needs that you associate with the Tennessee Titans. That's not how the Titans are going to approach roster building, and it's really not how they should. It should be more forward thinking. To draft a corner at 22 doesn't resolve the issues that you had last year with getting pressure, despite your secondary being nuked. And you can find a solid corner, maybe not necessarily somebody who's going to start for you right away, but if you don't address your defensive front, then it's all for naught. Wide receiver, obviously, you want to keep your options open for an offense that was scoring 30-plus points a game last year. But if he's there, I really like Christian Barmore, the defensive tackle out of Alabama. I think that he would play very, very well in a rotation with Danico Autry and Jeffrey Simmons, Bud Dupree, and Harold Landry up front. I think that gives you basically how at least the NFC teams have made it to the Super Bowl the past couple of years, and how the Tampa Bay Buccaneers ultimately ended up beating Patrick Mahomes is if you can get pressure with 4, then it's the best in sport outside of confident quarterback play and, obviously health. So Barmore to me makes a lot of sense.
Gotcha. Would you be surprised if the Tennessee Titans, again, a lot of people don't want to hear it, they went offensive tackle for the first round again since last year? Would you be surprised?
No. If that's the best player on your board, then draft him. You have a need. You screwed up last year. That shouldn't dissuade you from trying to continue to fix it. If it's an issue, continue to try and fix it. Isaiah Wilson, I'm not going to say there's never going to be another situation like Isaiah Wilson.
There might
be. To have a similar situation, and you're close to a similar situation in back-to-back years would be like lightning striking the same place twice. It's just hugely improbable, and it should not color your opinion on what this offensive tackle class looks like. So yeah, it continues to be a need. They have signed Kendall Lamb. They have re-signed Ty Sambrelo, who's a swing tackle, but you can still do with some competition. You need a more long-term solution. So It would probably bother a lot of fans, but it shouldn't because it's still a problem. Go fix it.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't be surprised, and that's where I'm kind of shooting for. I think they're going to go for offensive tackle. And again, you can't blame, because a lot of people are like, "Oh, I'm not going to." You shouldn't get a Georgia player. Again, it's not the school's team. It's not the school's team, and it sounds silly to not pick anyone from that school just because. And another thing is, a lot of people are questioning John Robinson and stuff like that. And look, because the man made one mistake. I mean, again, the draft class last year wasn't the greatest.
Oh, he's made a couple. Like it's not one mistake. Like I get the NJ Rob we trust, but I mean he's missed. He's missed on some guys.
Of course.
Defensive line players, edge players have been a problem. So he went out and paid one this year. Yeah. He's not without fault, but he is above average at his job. I think that's how most Titans fans should view him, as opposed to holding the misses over his head. Kevin Dodd and Isaiah Wilson are done. They've moved on. Mm-hmm. Fans should too.
Yep, I agree with that completely. Again, a lot of people like to nitpick. The smallest thing he can do, again, like you said, 5 winning seasons, but he messes up on a draft and they want him out. Like, it doesn't work like that. It really doesn't. And again, the Clowney thing, I mean, I was all for Clowney coming to the Titans. I knew what he was about. It was just about if he could stay healthy, and unfortunately, he couldn't. And I mean, good luck for the Browns, right?
Yeah, well, it depends on if you're a Titans fan or not.
Exactly. Last question before I let you go, Buck. In your opinion, who is your favorite Tennessee Titans player?
I don't. As a reporter, I don't know that I could answer that objectively.
That's fine. Who's your favorite NFL player?
No, I mean, I'll give you my favorite one to talk. I'll give you my favorite one to talk to.
Okay, there you go.
There are guys who are definitely entertaining. I mean, Brett Kern has always been. Brett Kern is the first person to come up to me in the locker room and say, "Hey, bud, do you need somebody to talk to?" Because I was terrified and I had no idea how to do my job. The first time I sat in the locker room, and I've always had a good relationship with Brett. Lawan is obviously a bit of an idiot, but he's entertaining. So I enjoy talking to Taylor when Taylor deems it worth his time to talk to me. There's a variety of different guys. I think that Jeffrey Simmons has become a lot more comfortable in speaking with us on a day-to-day basis. And, it's different when you're a rookie coming in and everybody's got, microphones and cameras pointed at you. But all 3 of those guys, there's a lot of, and I don't know if he's going to be back on the roster this year, but Darren Bates is one of my favorites, to be honest with you. And I'm glad that he has a podcast now so everybody else can see the kind of things that Darren Bates talks about on a regular basis.
He's definitely a hype man on that sideline. That you need that in your locker room. That you need someone just the hype guy. And he brings it, man. He brings it. He's a funny guy, but
for sure.
But again, I want to thank you so much, Buck, for coming on again and giving a shot and talking a little bit Titans and talking about a little bit about your background. It's been a pleasure and can't wait for the season to come on, man. And hopefully, you get to join the locker room and get to do all that good stuff. So I appreciate your work. Through A to Z Sports and the Zone. So thank you so much, buddy, for coming on.
Yeah, no doubt. Thanks for having me, man. It was fun.
All right, buddy. God bless and have a good day. All right, man?
All right. Take care. Thank you.